The text message arrived at 3:15 on a Tuesday afternoon. We all voted that she should stay. Below it, a photo of my 8-year-old daughter Emma, sitting alone on a bench at the airport, tears streaming down her face. My mother had just texted me that they had boarded their first-class flight to Florida without her, without my baby. I had kissed Emma goodbye that morning, excited she would spend a week with her grandparents and my sister's family. Now she was abandoned like luggage nobody wanted. My hands shook as I stared at the screen. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Instead, something cold and calculated settled into my chest. A plan began forming in my mind. I grabbed my car keys before the shock could paralyze me. My fingers fumbled with my phone as I dialed the airport security while running to my car. The woman who answered sounded bored until I explained that my 8-year-old daughter had been deliberately abandoned at the terminal. Her tone shifted immediately. She transferred me to someone else, then someone else. I was still on the phone when I peeled out of my driveway, breaking every speed limit on the 45-minute drive to the airport. My heart hammered against my ribs. How could they do this? My own parents. My own mother who had held Emma as a newborn and promised to always love her. My father who had taught Emma to ride a bike just 2 summers ago. How could they leave her there? When I finally found Emma in the lost and found office, she was curled up in a plastic chair, clutching the small backpack I had packed for her trip. Her eyes were swollen and red. The moment she saw me, she launched herself into my arms. "Mommy," she sobbed into my shoulder. "Grandma said they had to go. She said I needed to stay here and wait for you." I held her tight, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo, feeling her little body shake with each cry. The security officer, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, handed me a tissue box. She looked as disgusted as I felt. "What exactly did they say to you, sweetheart?" I asked gently, kneeling down to Emma's level once she had calmed down enough to speak. Emma wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "Grandma Patricia said the airplane was ready and they had to go right now. She told me to sit on the bench and be good, then they all walked away. Tyler and Madison were laughing at me. Mommy, Tyler said I was too stupid to go on vacation with them." My blood turned to ice. Tyler was my nephew, my sister Diane's 10-year-old son. Madison was 6. They had mocked my daughter while my parents abandoned her. I thanked the security officer and carried Emma to the car. She fell asleep on the drive home, exhausted from crying. I kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror. Her peaceful sleeping face a stark contrast to the rage building inside me. Once we got home and I tucked Emma into bed, I finally allowed myself to look at my phone. There were more messages from my mother, Patricia. I opened them with trembling hands. The first message was the photo of Emma crying. The second was the cold statement, "We all voted that she should stay." But there was a third message I had missed in my panic. A screenshot. My mother had accidentally sent me a screenshot of a family group chat, a group chat I had apparently been removed from. I enlarged the image, reading every word. Diane had written, "I really think we should vote on whether Emma comes with us. She doesn't deserve to be in first class with Tyler and Madison. She'll just embarrass us." My father, Gerald, had replied, "Agreed. Emma always ruins everything. Let's leave her at home. Meredith can deal with it." Craig, Diane's husband, had added, "First class is for real family, not charity cases." And my mother's final message in the chat, "Vote complete. Emma stays. We'll tell her at the airport so Meredith can't interfere." My hands shook as I dialed my mother's number. She answered on the first ring. "Meredith, I hope you got our message," she said, her voice clipped and cold. No apology, no explanation. "How could you do this to Emma?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. "Oh, please, you need to teach that child some manners. Emma is simply not up to the standards we expect. She's clumsy, she's awkward, and quite frankly, she's an embarrassment compared to Tyler and Madison. We didn't want her bad behavior influencing my other grandchildren." I couldn't breathe. "She's 8 years old, Mom, she's a child, and you're raising her poorly," Patricia snapped. "We paid for this trip. We decide who comes. Maybe this will teach both of you a lesson about gratitude and respect." She hung up on me. I immediately called my father. He answered with a sigh. "Meredith, your mother already talked to you. There's nothing more to discuss. We made our decision as a family." "Emma is family," I said, my voice breaking. "Emma is your responsibility, not ours. You should be grateful we've done as much as we have for her over the years. We don't owe you anything." His voice was matter-of-fact, as if he was discussing the weather and not the emotional destruction of his granddaughter. Before I could respond, he hung up too. Honestly, Meredith, Emma is kind of ugly and rude compared to my kids. I didn't want Tyler and Madison picking up her bad habits. You understand, right? It's nothing personal, nothing personal. They had traumatized my daughter and it was nothing personal. I sat in my dark living room, my phone glowing in my hand. Then I started scrolling. I went back through old emails, old messages, and there it was 2 weeks ago, an email exchange between my mother and Diane. Subject line: the Florida problem. Patricia had written, "We need to find a way to uninvite Emma without causing a scene. I refuse to spend a week dealing with that child." Diane, any ideas? Diane had replied, "What if we wait until we're at the airport? That way Meredith can't argue or show up. We just leave Emma there and go. By the time Meredith arrives, we'll already be in the air." Brilliant, let's do that. They had been planning this for 2 weeks. Every smile, every "we can't wait to take Emma on this trip" had been a lie. They had looked my daughter in the eyes, told her how excited they were, and all along they planned to abandon her. I could have screamed. I could have thrown my phone across the room. I could have driven to the airport and demanded they turn the plane around. But I didn't do any of those things. Instead, I opened my laptop. I took screenshots of everything: the group chat, the emails, the planning, the cruelty. I downloaded the photo of Emma crying at the airport. I saved every single piece of evidence. Then I called a lawyer. It was late, but the attorney I reached specialized in family law. I explained the situation. She was horrified. "This could potentially be considered child endangerment," she said carefully. "At minimum, it's emotional abuse. Document everything, we may need it." I thanked her and hung up. Then I sat in the darkness staring at my phone at the evidence of my family's betrayal, and I began to formulate a plan. I would not yell, I would not beg, I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me broken. I would do something much, much more effective. The next morning I started making calls. I called my uncle Douglas first. He was my father's brother, a good man who had always been kind to Emma. I called him everything. I sent him the screenshots. Jesus Christ, he breathed into the phone. "Gerald and Patricia did this to Emma." "Yes," I said simply, "I'm calling them right now," Douglas said, his voice tight with anger. "This is unacceptable." Next I called my Aunt Helen, my mother's sister. She had the same reaction. Horror followed by fury. She promised to call Patricia immediately. Then I did something I had been avoiding for years. I posted on my personal Facebook account. It wasn't public, just friends and family, but I told the truth. I posted the photo of Emma at the airport. I posted the screenshots of the group chat in the emails. I wrote a simple caption: "My parents and my sister abandoned my 8-year-old daughter at the airport because they voted that she wasn't good enough to vacation with them. This is what family betrayal looks like." Within an hour, my phone was ringing off the hook. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years were messaging me horrified. Friends were commenting in support. Uncle Douglas called back to tell me he had screamed at my father for 20 minutes. Aunt Helen reported that she had called my mother a disgrace to the family name. I felt a grim satisfaction. They wanted to humiliate my daughter. Fine, let's see how they enjoyed being exposed. But I should have known my parents wouldn't go down without a fight. By that evening, the counter-attack began. My mother started calling every family member who had contacted her, spinning a completely different story. I found out from my cousin Rachel what my mother was saying. "Patricia is telling everyone that you're a terrible mother," Rachel said carefully. "She's saying Emma is out of control, that you neglect her, and that they were trying to help parent her, but you got vindictive when they set boundaries." My jaw dropped. "That's completely false." "I know," Rachel said quickly. "I believe you, but some of the older relatives are listening to her." Then came the Facebook post. Diane created a public post on her page, which had over 2,000 followers. She wrote a long, detailed story about how I was a manipulative, unstable mother who used my daughter as a pawn to extort money and attention from the family. She claimed Emma had severe behavioral issues that I refused to address. She painted herself and our parents as victims of my emotional abuse. The post got hundreds of shares within hours. My father called me that night not to apologize, to threaten. "If you don't take down that post and publicly apologize for defaming us, I will sue you for slander," he said coldly. "We have lawyers, Nerdith, good ones, you're going to regret this." I hung up on him. Craig, Diane's husband, sent me an email that night. The subject line was "Final Warning." The email read, "You have 24 hours to retract your lies and issue a public apology to your parents and my wife. If you don't, we will destroy your reputation in this town. I have connections, don't test me." I stared at the email. Craig worked as a VP at a large regional company. He did have connections and he was vindictive enough to use them. The next day at work, my boss called me into his office. His name was Richard and he happened to be a friend of my mother's. They had met at some charity event years ago and stayed in touch. "Meredith," Richard said, looking uncomfortable, "I got a call from Patricia this morning. My stomach dropped. She said you're going through some serious personal issues, mental health struggles. She's worried about you and wanted me to know in case it affects your work performance." "That's not true," I said immediately. "She's lying because I exposed what she did to my daughter." Richard held up his hand. "I'm not taking sides. I'm just saying if you need some time off to deal with family matters, maybe that would be best for everyone." It wasn't a suggestion, it was a warning. My mother was going to try to get me fired. The therapy bills were already piling up. Emma's pediatrician had referred us to a child psychologist specializing in trauma. Insurance only covered part of it. Between the therapy costs, the lawyer consultation fees, and my regular bills, money was getting tight, and some of my friends, the ones who had known my parents for years, were starting to believe Patricia's version of events. 3 people unfriended me on Facebook. One former college roommate sent me a message saying she was disappointed in how I was handling family disagreements and that I should be more mature. I felt like I was drowning. My parents had money, connections, and a convincing story. I had the truth, but the truth seemed to matter less and less. Emma asked me one evening, her voice small, "Mommy, why do Grandma and Aunt Diane hate me?" "They don't hate you, baby," I lied, holding her close. "They have problems in their hearts that have nothing to do with you." But Emma wasn't stupid. "Am I ugly like Aunt Diane said?" My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. "No, sweetheart. You are beautiful and perfect and loved." That night after Emma fell asleep, I sat on my couch and realized I was being backed into a corner. My parents were winning. They were controlling the narrative, threatening my job, isolating me from friends and family. But I refused to give up. If they wanted war, they would get war. I opened my laptop and began the next phase of my plan. I hired a lawyer the next morning. Her name was Jennifer Park, and she specialized in family law and child welfare cases. She wasn't cheap, but after I explained everything and showed her my evidence, she took my case with barely concealed fury. What they did could constitute child endangerment under state law. Jennifer said, "Leaving an 8-year-old alone at an airport is criminal. We can file charges. We can also pursue a civil case for emotional distress." "Do it," I said. Jennifer drafted a cease and desist letter that afternoon. It was sent as certified mail to my parents, my sister, and Craig. The letter demanded they stop spreading false information about me, retract their public statements, and agree to mediation. If they refused, we would pursue legal action. I also decided to go public, really public. I had been holding back, posting only to my private Facebook, but now I created a full post on my public account with maximum privacy settings removed. I included the screenshots of the group chat, the planning emails, and the heartbreaking photo of Emma alone at the airport. I wrote a detailed account of everything that had happened. Within 24 hours, the post had been shared over 3,000 times. Local news outlets started reaching out to me. A reporter from the regional newspaper called and asked if I would be willing to be interviewed. People were outraged. Comments flooded in from strangers offering support, sharing their own stories of family betrayal, condemning my parents and sister. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from people I hadn't heard from in years, all expressing shock and sympathy. For a brief moment I felt vindicated. The truth was out there, people could see what had really happened. But I had underestimated just how ruthless my family could be. My parents hired a lawyer, not just any lawyer, one of the most expensive attorneys in the state. Within 3 days of receiving Jennifer's cease and desist letter, I was served with papers. They were suing me for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress, claiming my posts had damaged their reputation and caused them severe mental anguish. They were seeking $50,000 in damages. Diane went even further. She created a GoFundMe page titled, help our family recover from false accusations. In the description, she claimed that I was a mentally unstable mother who had fabricated an entire story to extort money from my elderly parents. She said Emma did have behavioral issues, including ADHD and violent tendencies, and that my parents had made the difficult decision not to bring her on the trip for safety reasons. According to Diane's post, I was now harassing and threatening the family. The GoFundMe page raised over $6,000 in 2 days. Then Craig made his move. He had connections and he used every single one of them. He called my boss, Richard, and apparently had a very persuasive conversation. I don't know exactly what was said, but the next morning Richard called me into his office again. "Meredith, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to let you go," he said, not meeting my eyes. "What? Why?" I demanded. "The company can't be associated with this kind of controversy. It's affecting our image. We've had clients asking questions. It's just better for everyone if you move on." "This is wrongful termination," I said, my voice shaking. "You're an at-will employee," Richard replied. "We don't need a reason, but if you want an official reason, we're downsizing your department." I was fired just like that. No income, mounting legal bills, therapy costs for Emma, and now I had to find a new job while in the middle of a very public family war. I went home in a daze. Emma was at school. I sat in my car in the driveway and finally let myself cry. Not just cry, sob. Great heaving sobs that made my whole body shake. But I couldn't fall apart. Emma needed me. I wiped my tears, went inside and started applying for new jobs online. Then I got a call from the local news station. They wanted to do a story on what happened. They had seen my viral post and thought it would make compelling television. I hesitated. Jennifer advised caution, but I was desperate. Maybe if I told my story on the news, I could find a new job. Maybe someone would see it and want to hire me. Maybe public pressure would force my family to back down. I agreed to the interview. That was my first big mistake. The news station did their research. They contacted my parents for comment, and my parents, clever as they were, had been preparing. My mother gave them a tearful interview. She claimed she was a heartbroken grandmother who had only tried to help her troubled granddaughter. She showed them fake doctor's notes, claiming Emma had been diagnosed with severe ADHD and aggressive behavior problems. Diane also appeared on camera crying, saying she had feared for her children's safety around Emma, and that my parents had made the difficult but necessary choice to protect Tyler and Madison. When the segment aired, it showed both sides of the story. My tearful account of Emma being abandoned, and my mother's equally tearful account of a grandmother trying to protect her family from a dangerous child and a vindictive daughter. The public opinion, which had been solidly on my side, started to split. Comments on the news station's Facebook page were mixed. If the grandmother has doctor's notes proving the kid is violent, maybe they did the right thing. I don't know who to believe anymore. This sounds like a family that needs therapy, not a courtroom. Some people still supported me, but others now questioned my story. My mother had managed to plant doubt. And then the online harassment began. People who believed my parents started sending me hateful messages. Strangers called me a liar, a bad mother, a manipulative witch. My Facebook post was reported so many times that it was temporarily taken down for review. I felt like I was trapped in quicksand. Every move I made to save myself only pulled me down deeper. That night Emma couldn't sleep. She asked me if it was true that she was a bad kid who hurt people. "No, baby," I said, holding her. "You are good and kind and gentle." But the damage was done. My 8-year-old daughter was starting to believe the lies about herself, and I had no idea how to fix it. The interview disaster had consequences I hadn't anticipated. Within days, I was being attacked on every social media platform. Anonymous accounts called me names, threatened me, told me I was a terrible mother who didn't deserve Emma. Some people even called Child Protective Services to report me for neglect and emotional abuse. 2 CPS workers showed up at my door on a Thursday morning. They were polite but firm. They needed to inspect my home and interview Emma. Someone had filed a complaint claiming I was mentally unstable and potentially dangerous to my child. I let them in, my hands trembling. They walked through every room of my small house taking notes. They spoke to Emma privately in her bedroom for 20 minutes. I stood in the hallway, my heart pounding, terrified they would believe the lies and take my daughter away. Emma came out crying. One of the workers, a woman named Sandra, put a hand on my shoulder. "Your daughter is clearly well cared for and loved." Sandra said gently, "This complaint appears to be malicious. We'll be closing this case, but I want you to know that whoever filed this report gave very specific details about your alleged mental health issues. Do you know who might have done this?" "My sister," I said quietly, "and my parents." Sandra's expression hardened. "Document everything. If they file false reports again, that's abuse of the system and we can pursue charges against them." After the CPS workers left, I held Emma while she cried. She had been terrified they were going to take her away from me. "They said, 'People think you're crazy, Mommy,'" Emma sobbed. "Are you crazy?" "No, sweetheart, I'm not. Some people are just saying mean things because they're angry." That night, I sat on my bathroom floor after Emma fell asleep and had a complete breakdown. No job, being sued for $50,000, legal bills piling up, my daughter traumatized, CPS investigating me, online harassment, my family systematically destroying my life. I had tried to fight back and every single thing I did made it worse. I felt like I was drowning in an ocean with no shore in sight. But then my phone buzzed. An email from an address I didn't recognize. I know what Patricia did. I opened it with shaking hands. "Dear Meredith, my name is Sharon Whitmore. I used to work with your mother at Riverside non-profit organization from 2010 to 2015. I saw the news segment about your family situation. I want you to know that your mother is not the saint she pretends to be. Patricia was fired from Riverside for embezzlement. She stole over $30,000 from the organization over a 3-year period. I was the accountant who discovered it. The organization chose not to press charges because Patricia's husband, Gerald, paid back the money and they didn't want the scandal. But I kept copies of all the financial records. If you need proof of who your mother really is, I'm willing to help. I'm also willing to testify if necessary. What she did to your daughter is unforgivable." I read the email 5 times, then I called the number Sharon had included at the bottom. She answered on the second ring. "Meredith, yes, is this real? Did my mother really steal money, $32,467? Sharon said over 3 years. She created fake vendors and wrote checks to herself. I have copies of everything. I was threatened with illegal action if I ever spoke about it, but enough time has passed. And honestly, after seeing what she did to that little girl, I don't care anymore. She needs to be stopped." We talked for over an hour. Sharon sent me encrypted files containing bank statements, cancelled checks, and internal memos documenting my mother's theft. It was all there, proof that my saintly, charitable mother was a thief. I started digging deeper. If my mother was capable of embezzlement, what else had my family been hiding? I hired a private investigator. His name was Marcus and he was expensive, but I scraped together the money by selling my car and borrowing from Uncle Douglas. Marcus went to work immediately. Within a week, he had uncovered a treasure trove of information. My father, Gerald, had been sued 8 years ago by a former business partner for fraud. The case had been settled out of court, but the court records were public. Gerald had apparently taken investments for a business venture that never materialized and kept the money. He paid back some investors to avoid criminal charges, but several others never recovered their losses. Diane and Craig's perfect marriage was a facade. Marcus discovered that Craig had been having an affair with his secretary for over a year. He had emails, hotel receipts, everything. And the best part, my parents were in serious financial trouble. They owed the IRS over $83,000 in back taxes. They had been dodging payment for 3 years, racking up penalties and interest. The IRS had filed a tax lien against their property. All of this information had been hidden from the family. My parents pretended to be wealthy and successful. Diane pretended to have a perfect marriage. Craig pretended to be an upstanding corporate executive. All lies. I now had ammunition. Real, documented, devastating ammunition. But I hesitated. If I released this information publicly, I would be stooping to their level. I would be exposing family secrets in private pain. Then Emma had another nightmare. She woke up screaming that Grandma was telling everyone she was a monster. I ran to her room and held her while she cried herself back to sleep. That's when I made my decision. They had declared war on my daughter, on me, and in war you use every weapon available. I posted the information on Facebook, the court records showing my father's fraud settlement, the documentation of my mother's embezzlement, the IRS tax lien. I wrote a simple caption. Before you believe my parents' lies about me, maybe you should know who they really are. The post went viral again. Over 5,000 shares in the first day. My mother called me screaming, "How dare you? This is invasion of privacy. We'll sue you for this too. It's all public record, Mom," I said calmly. "I didn't invade anything. I just shared the truth like I've been doing all along." She hung up, but the retaliation came swiftly. Diane called Child Protective Services again, filing another false report. This time she claimed she had witnessed me hitting Emma. It was a complete fabrication, but CPS had to investigate. When the worker showed up again, Emma was at school. They interviewed her there without my knowledge. My daughter came home that afternoon terrified and confused. "Mommy, why did those people come to my school and ask if you hurt me?" Emma asked, her voice small and scared. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive to Diane's house and tell her exactly what I thought of her, but I didn't. Instead, I held my daughter and explained as gently as I could that some people were telling lies about us. The CPS case was closed again within days. Emma's teacher, her pediatrician, and her therapist all vouched for me. Sandra, the same CPS worker from before, apologized for the harassment. "I'm filing a report about the false claims," she said. "This is clearly a targeted harassment campaign. I'm so sorry you're going through this." That night I sat on my living room floor with my laptop, Emma asleep upstairs, and felt utterly defeated. I had fought back. I had exposed their secrets, and all it had done was make them fight dirtier. I had no job. I was being sued. I was being investigated repeatedly by CPS. My daughter was having nightmares. Our savings were almost gone. I had tried to protect Emma, and I felt like I was failing. But then I looked at Sharon's email again, and I remembered something Sharon had said on the phone. "I'm willing to testify if necessary." Testify in court under oath. That's when the real plan started to form. A plan that didn't involve social media or public opinion. A plan that involved legal accountability and real consequences. I called Jennifer, my lawyer. At 1000 p.m. she answered groggy. "Jennifer, I need to file criminal charges." I said, "For the embezzlement, and I need to contact the IRS about my parents' tax situation, and I need to get all of this evidence in front of a judge." There was a pause, then Jennifer said, "Let me make some calls." This just became a very different kind of case. I hung up and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. I stopped posting on social media completely. No more Facebook updates, no more responses to comments, nothing. People thought I had given up. Friends messaged asking if I was okay. Strangers who had been following the stories speculated that I had backed down. My parents thought they had won. My mother posted on Facebook about finally having peace from false accusations and thanked everyone for their support during this difficult time. Diane posted a photo of Tyler and Madison with the caption, "Family is everything," followed by a heart emoji. But I wasn't silent because I had given up. I was silent because I was working. Jennifer and I spent 2 weeks building an airtight case. Sharon provided her testimony and all the financial documents proving my mother's embezzlement. We contacted the organization where Patricia had worked. And while they wouldn't publicly confirm the theft due to their settlement agreement, they privately acknowledged the truth to Jennifer. We also compiled all the evidence of the IRS tax lien against my parents. Jennifer filed formal complaints with the appropriate authorities, including detailed documentation of my parents' attempts to evade their tax obligations. Marcus, my private investigator, gathered concrete proof of Craig's affair. Hotel receipts, credit card statements for jewelry, and dinners with his secretary, text messages Marcus had obtained through legal channels. It was damning. We also compiled every single text message, email, and Facebook post where my parents and sister had made false claims about me and Emma. Every lie about Emma being violent, about me being mentally ill, every defamatory statement. Jennifer documented it all. And then we filed not just one lawsuit, multiple legal actions simultaneously. We filed a criminal complaint against my mother for the embezzlement, providing Sharon's testimony and the financial records. Even though the original organization had chosen not to press charges, the statute of limitations hadn't expired, and with new evidence and a willing witness, the district attorney agreed to investigate. We submitted all the documentation about my parents' tax situation to the IRS, along with evidence that they had been hiding assets and income. The IRS took tax fraud very seriously. We filed a civil lawsuit against Patricia, Gerald, and Diane for child endangerment, emotional distress, and defamation. We included Emma's therapy records, the CPS reports clearing me, and testimony from Emma's doctors. And Jennifer sent a private letter to Craig's employer. Not a threat, just information. Public information about the affair obtained legally, along with copies of company credit card statements that Marcus had discovered showing Craig had been using company funds for personal expenses related to the affair, dinners, hotels, gifts, all charged to his corporate card. Then we waited. The first domino fell within 48 hours. The IRS showed up at my parents' house at 8:00 in the morning on a Monday. They weren't there to chat. They were there to audit, to examine assets, and to demand immediate payment of the outstanding tax debt plus penalties. My father called me furious. "What did you do?" "I reported tax evasion to the IRS," I said calmly, "which is the legal obligation of any citizen who becomes aware of it." "You vindictive little—" I hung up before he could finish. The second domino fell that afternoon. Craig's employer called him into an emergency meeting. Marcus had a contact at the company who kept us updated. Craig was terminated, effective immediately, for misuse of company resources and violation of the employee conduct policy regarding workplace relationships. Diane called me sobbing. "You destroyed my husband's career. How could you?" "I didn't destroy anything." I said Craig destroyed his own career when he committed fraud and had an affair. "I just made sure the truth came out." She hung up, still crying. The third domino fell 2 days later. The district attorney's office formally reopened the investigation into my mother's embezzlement. Sharon was called in to give an official statement. The local newspaper got wind of it and published an article, "Former non-profit employee under investigation for embezzlement." My mother's phone number was in the article. She started receiving calls from people she had worked with, people she knew from church, people in the community. Her reputation was crumbling. The news station that had aired the original story about Emma being abandoned reached out to me for a follow-up. This time I declined. Jennifer declined on my behalf. "We didn't need public opinion anymore. We have the law on our side." But the news station did their own investigating. They discovered the embezzlement story, the tax lien, Craig's firing. They aired a new segment titled "Family Drama Reveals Deeper Issues." The segment didn't take sides. It simply reported the facts. Patricia Wilson, former non-profit employee under investigation for theft. Gerald Wilson, tax lien for over $80,000. Craig Henderson fired from VP position for misconduct. The segment ended with a note that the family was involved in ongoing legal disputes. The public opinion shifted dramatically. The GoFundMe page Diane had created was reported for fraud and taken down. People who had donated demanded refunds. My parents' Facebook posts were flooded with comments calling them hypocrites and criminals. Diane's perfect family image shattered. Her friends stopped calling. Tyler's soccer team politely asked that he take a break from the team due to family circumstances affecting team dynamics. Madison's playdate invitations dried up. My parents' neighbors started avoiding them. The people at their church who had been so supportive when they were the victims of their troubled daughter now whispered behind their backs. But I still wasn't satisfied, because none of this addressed what they had done to Emma. The legal system was punishing their crimes and lies, but they hadn't acknowledged the pain they had caused my daughter. That was about to change. Jennifer called me on a Friday afternoon, day 6 of my silent campaign. "Meredith, I just received a call from Patricia and Gerald's attorney. They want to meet. They want to discuss a settlement." "No settlement," I said immediately. "Hear me out," Jennifer said. "We have them cornered. The IRS is demanding payment. The DA is building a criminal case. They're facing serious legal and financial consequences. We have leverage, real leverage. We can demand terms." I thought about it. "What kind of terms?" "Whatever you want," Jennifer said, "within legal reason." I smiled for the first time in weeks. "Set up the meeting. I know exactly what I want." The meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday, day 7. Since I had stopped posting on social media. Day 7 since I had started my silent legal assault, but before the meeting could even happen, the situation accelerated. On Monday morning, the IRS placed a levy on my parents' bank accounts, freezing their assets until the tax debt was resolved. My father couldn't access his money. My mother couldn't pay bills. At 9:00 a.m., Craig's former employer filed a civil lawsuit against him for embezzlement of company funds, claiming he had stolen over $15. Through fraudulent expense reports. Craig was facing criminal charges. Now too at 11:00 a.m., Patricia received official notification that the district attorney was moving forward with criminal charges for the embezzlement from the nonprofit. She would need to appear in court for arraignment. At 1:00 p.m., the bank that held my parents' mortgage sent a notice of default. They were 3 months behind on payments, and with the IRS levy, they couldn't catch up. The foreclosure process would begin in 30 days. At 3:00 p.m., Tyler School called Diane to inform her that Tyler had been involved in a bullying incident. Several parents had complained that Tyler was mocking another child about their family's financial problems. The school was suspending him for 3 days. At 5:00 p.m., Gerald's former business partner from the fraud lawsuit 8 years ago saw the news coverage and filed a motion to reopen his civil case, claiming Gerald had lied during the original settlement negotiations. By the time Tuesday morning arrived for our scheduled meeting, my parents' lives had completely collapsed in a single day. Jennifer and I arrived at the attorney's office at 9:00 a.m. My parents were already there, sitting in a conference room with their lawyer, a sharp-looking man named Robert Chen. Diane was there too without Craig. Her eyes were red and swollen. I sat down across from them. My mother looked like she had aged 10 years. My father's hands shook slightly as he gripped the edge of the table. Robert Chen started to speak, but I held up my hand. "Before anyone says anything, I want to make something very clear," I said, looking directly at my mother, then my father, then Diane. "You destroyed my daughter. You traumatized an 8-year-old child for no reason other than cruelty. You abandoned her at an airport and then spent weeks trying to destroy me when I dared to stand up for her. You lied, you manipulated, you filed false reports with CPS, you got me fired, you tried to ruin my life." My mother opened her mouth to speak, but I continued. "I have evidence of embezzlement, I have evidence of tax fraud, I have evidence of workplace misconduct and fraud, I have testimony from CPS workers about your false reports, I have medical records proving you lied about Emma's behavior, I have recordings of your threats, I have everything." I placed a folder on the table and slid it to the center. Jennifer had prepared it the night before. "These are your choices," I said. Option 1, we go to court, all of it. The criminal trial for embezzlement, the IRS prosecution, the civil lawsuit for what you did to Emma. I will testify. Sharon will testify, Emma's therapist will testify, and I will make sure every single detail of your lies and crimes is public record. Patricia's face had gone pale. Gerald looked like he might be sick. Option 2, I continued. You agree to my terms right now today, and I will use my influence to minimize some of the damage. I can't stop the IRS or the DA, but I can choose not to pursue additional charges. I can choose to settle the civil case quietly. Robert Chen leaned forward. "What are your terms?" I pulled out a document Jennifer had prepared. "First, Patricia and Gerald will post a public apology on Facebook to me and Emma. A real apology admitting what you did was wrong. You will acknowledge that Emma is a wonderful child who did nothing to deserve being abandoned. You will acknowledge that you lied about her having behavioral problems." Patricia's lip trembled, but she nodded. "Second, Diane will do the same. You will retract every false statement you made. You will publicly apologize for the lies and the GoFundMe fraud." Diane wiped tears from her face and nodded. "Third, you will establish a trust fund for Emma, $50,000. The money will come from the proceeds of selling your house, which you're going to lose to foreclosure anyway. That money will be untouchable and will go to Emma when she turns 18 for college." Gerald started to protest, but Robert Chen put a hand on his arm. "Continue," Robert said to me. "Fourth, Craig will write letters of recommendation for me to 3 companies of my choosing. Glowing recommendations. He will use whatever connections he has left to help me find a new job." Diane whispered something to Robert, who nodded. "Agreed," Robert said. "Fifth, all 4 of you will attend family therapy, not together. Individual therapy to address whatever broken parts of you thought it was acceptable to abuse a child. You will continue therapy for a minimum of 1 year and provide proof of attendance." My mother was crying now, silent tears running down her face. And 6th, I said, my voice hard, you will have no contact with Emma. None. No calls, no letters, no messages through other family members. Nothing. If Emma chooses to contact you when she's an adult, that's her choice. But until then, you are dead to her. You lost the privilege of being her grandparents and her aunt. That's harsh, Gerald said, his voice cracking. You left her at an airport, I said coldly. You made her believe she was worthless. You traumatized my daughter. This isn't harsh, this is mercy, because I could destroy all of you completely if I wanted to. The room was silent for a long moment. Robert Chen looked at his clients. Patricia was sobbing openly now. Gerald's jaw was clenched. Diane had her face in her hands. If you don't agree, I added, I walk out of here and tomorrow I file additional charges. I will pursue the maximum penalties for everything. I will make sure the criminal trials are as public as possible. I will give interviews to every news outlet that asks. I will write a book if I have to. I will make sure that when people Google your names, they find out exactly who you are. Robert Chen whispered with his clients for several minutes, then he turned to me. They agree to all terms, he said. Jennifer pulled out the settlement agreement. It took 2 hours to finalize the language and get signatures, but by noon it was done. My parents would post their public apologies by the end of the day. The trust fund would be established within 1 week. Craig's letters of recommendation would be sent within 48 hours. Therapy would begin immediately and they would never contact Emma again. As we left the office, my mother tried to speak to me. Meredith, please, she's my granddaughter, I made a mistake. I looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman who had given birth to me, raised me, and then betrayed me in the worst possible way. Emma is not your granddaughter anymore, I said quietly. You voted that she should stay, remember? So she's staying with me, away from you. I walked away. By that evening the public apologies had been posted. They were brief but clear. Admissions of guilt, acknowledgements of wrongdoing, apologies to Emma. The comments were a mix of shock and support. People who had believed my parents now felt betrayed. People who had supported me felt vindicated. But I didn't care about public opinion anymore. I only cared about one thing. I went home and found Emma in her room coloring. I sat down next to her. Sweetheart, I have something to tell you, I said gently. Emma looked up at me with her big, trusting eyes. Your grandparents and Aunt Diane said they're sorry for what they did. They know they were wrong and they're not going to bother us anymore. Do I have to see them? Emma asked, her voice small. No, baby, never again if you don't want to. Emma thought about it for a moment. Then she said, I don't want to, they were mean to me. I know, sweetheart, and I'm so sorry that happened to you, but I promise you I will always protect you no matter what. Emma hugged me tight. I love you, Mommy. I love you too, baby, more than anything in the world. That night, for the first time in weeks, Emma slept through the night without nightmares. 3 months passed before I really felt like I could breathe again. Craig's letters of recommendation worked. I got a new job at a better company with better pay and better people. My new boss, a kind woman named Catherine, knew about the situation from the news, but hired me anyway because she believed in second chances and standing up for what's right. The trust fund was established. $50,000 sat in an account that could only be accessed when Emma turned 18. It would pay for her college or help her start a business or whatever she wanted to do with her future. Patricia and Gerald sold their house to pay the IRS. They moved into a small apartment across town. Patricia was convicted of embezzlement and received 2 years of probation plus community service. Gerald settled his tax debt by liquidating his retirement accounts. They were broke, disgraced, and alone. Diane divorced Craig. He was convicted of embezzlement from his company and sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. Diane got a job as a receptionist and moved with Tyler and Madison into a small rental house. I heard through family members that Tyler and Madison were doing better now, away from Craig's influence, and that Diane was actually trying to be a better mother. I felt no satisfaction in their suffering, just a quiet sense of justice. They had hurt my daughter and there were consequences, real consequences. Emma continued therapy for 6 months. Her therapist, Dr. Rachel Simmons, told me that Emma was resilient and would recover fully with time and support. The nightmare stopped. Emma's smile came back. She made new friends at school and joined a gymnastics class that she loved. One evening, about 4 months after everything ended, Emma and I were sitting together on the couch looking through old photos. She pointed to a picture of herself with my parents from 2 years ago. That's when Grandma and Grandpa still loved me, right? Emma asked. I took a deep breath. Sweetheart, sometimes people have problems inside themselves that make them do mean things. It was never about you not being lovable. You are the most lovable person in the world. They just have broken parts inside them that made them act badly. Emma thought about that. Do you think they'll ever fix their broken parts? I don't know, baby, maybe, but even if they do, they made choices that hurt you and that has consequences. I don't need them, Emma said simply. I have you and we have each other, and that's more than enough. Emma snuggled into my side. Mommy, yes, sweetheart, you're the best mommy in the whole world. I held her close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo, feeling her warmth against me. And you're the best daughter in the whole world. We sat there together in the quiet comfort of our small house, just the two of us, and it was perfect. I learned something through all of this. I learned that family isn't just about blood, it's about love, respect, and loyalty. I learned that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most can hurt you the deepest. But I also learned that you don't have to accept that hurt. You can stand up. You can fight back. You can protect the people you love. I learned that strength doesn't always look like shouting or crying or making scenes. Sometimes strength is quiet, strategic, patient. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just making sure there are real consequences for real harm. And I learned that my daughter, my sweet Emma, is stronger than anyone gave her credit for. She survived being abandoned by her grandparents. She survived weeks of hearing lies about herself. She survived watching her mother struggle and fight. And she came out on the other side still kind, still loving, still trusting. That's the real victory. Not that my parents lost their house or face legal consequences, but that Emma didn't let their cruelty change who she is. As I tucked Emma into bed that night, she asked me one more question. Mommy, if you could go back and change what happened at the airport, would you? I thought about it carefully. You know what, sweetheart? I wish it had never happened because I never want to see you hurt. But what happened showed me how strong you are. And it showed me that I would do anything, face anyone, fight any battle to protect you. So in a strange way it made us stronger. Emma smiled. We're like superheroes, I laughed. Yes, baby, we're like superheroes. After Emma fell asleep, I sat in my living room with a cup of tea and thought about everything that had happened. 7 days, that's how long it took for my parents' lives to fall apart after they abandoned my daughter. 7 days from the moment I decided to stop shouting and start strategizing. But the truth is their lives fell apart because of choices they made long before that. The embezzlement, the tax fraud, the lies, the cruelty, I didn't destroy them. They destroyed themselves. I just made sure the truth came out. Some people might say I went too far, that I was vindictive or cruel. But those people didn't see my daughter's face when she was left alone at that airport. They didn't hear her nightmares. They didn't watch her ask if she was a bad kid. I did what I had to do to protect my child, and I would do it all again in a heartbeat. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who hurt someone you love? Have you ever had to make the choice between keeping the peace and protecting your child? What would you have done in my situation? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find stories like this and know they're not alone in their struggles. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. I share stories about real people facing real challenges, stories about betrayal and resilience, pain and healing. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Someone who's struggling with toxic family members, or someone who needs to know that it's okay to stand up for yourself and your children. Sometimes the best thing we can do is share our stories so others know they're not alone. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. And to everyone out there who is fighting to protect someone they love, whether it's your child, your partner, yourself, keep fighting. You're stronger than you know. Don't let anyone, not even family, make you or your loved ones feel worthless. You deserve respect, you deserve kindness, and you deserve to be protected. I wish you all love, strength, and the courage to stand up for what's right, no matter how hard it gets. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Until next time. Music.